I was at the NCAA tournament covering the Houston Cougars, and I was MMJing at the time. And man, like, just I had so many issues, and they continued to pile onto one another. It was tough, man. Like I had like mentally, I'm never one to complain, but it got so bad. Like the camera wasn't working, and my live shot wasn't going through, and it was one of those situations that
Oh,
would have
no.
been awesome to have an extra hand and have a photographer. But I was all the way up north covering a big event where they were relying on me back in my station to come through. And actually, at the time, that was my very first really big opportunity to travel. And once again, I was by myself, and it just was a tough feeling where I just felt like nothing was going my way, and I wasn't able to really execute some of the basic things that they were asking me to do, even though all of the issues were none of those were my fault. It was just things that just kept
Mm.
piling on. Tough. And at the end of the day, it really wasn't even a learning lesson. The learning lesson was please send me up with a photographer next time. But yeah, bumps along the way. And like I said, everything is a learning lesson. And I'm always striving to continue to get better.
Welcome to Pinnacle Code, where we spotlight high achievers in the culture and decode how they got to where they are today. I'm your host, Ben Arthur. Excited to be joined by my guy, Chance Johnson. He is a sports anchor and reporter in Houston, working for the NBC affiliate, KPRC. He's a rising talent in the sports broadcasting space. But before heading to Houston, he was in Wisconsin, where he made his mark, covered several Green Bay Packers playoff runs, and at his station in Green Bay, he was the lead sports reporter during what was it, the Milwaukee Bucks NBA championship run. So has had a lot of cool experiences, and at 26, I mean, working in one of the largest media markets in the country. So he's a talent for sure, and we go way back. I mean, 7, 8 years at this point. So
That's crazy.
yeah, man. But it's good to have you on, Chance. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime I can, I can join my fellow SJI brother, I'm always happy to hop on. And I think it's, having an opportunity to talk about, journey and career path is a big thing, especially for people who do look like us.
Yeah.
Everybody's journey and story is different. So I'm always happy to, share kind of how I got to where I'm at right now.
Absolutely. And our connection goes beyond SGI, the Sports Journalism Institute. I think we were in the student projects for the National Association of Black Journalists.
Yep, yep,
Was in 2017 in New
yep.
Orleans. So that's 7 years ago now. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it's like yeah, well, let me cut you off, but, when you think about, where we are now, right? And I think
yeah,
it's funny because I kinda remember having like, some smaller conversations about, like, "Hey, like, this would be interesting to look back on, years down the line, and here we are, everybody's kinda doing their own thing, and, you talk about me, but obviously you're doing your thing yourself, so, it's
no
definitely
kidding.
been an honor to watch everybody around, myself, kind of grow and continue to do great things."
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone in our kind of orbit, and we know a lot of the same people. Everyone seems to be doing their thing. So, but again, Chance, appreciate you, bro, for coming on and kind of let's dive in, right? So I know for you, I mean, you're basically working in your hometown. You're from Houston, or I believe a suburb of Houston. What do people need to know about your upbringing there to kind of understand the guy talking to me today? Someone who at 26 is working in the media market that you're in now.
No, that's actually a really good question because I've done a lot of these, before, but I don't think anybody's ever asked me about my upbringing, and that, I guess when I look back on it, it really laid the foundation, for somebody like myself, man. I've been watching and playing sports, just like a lot of people who are in this space since I was a child, and, for me, I would always be in people's conversations, probably a little bit, younger than should have been at the time, and inserting myself in the sports debates and everything like that, and kinda joke that, when I was a kid growing up, they used to call me Sports Center within the barbershop because I would always just add in my 2 cents. It's like, who's this 8-year-old kid who thinks he knows more than I do? But I used to come with stats and facts and everything like that. And so now to be doing it, at a pretty high level, it's pretty cool. But yeah, man, like, for somebody like myself, I think the biggest thing is I've always had support from my family and, my parents, and they put me in a lot of situations early on to continue to develop and kind of, really in my craft and my personality, and let me just be myself. And so, grew up in the church, and I used to do we used to have oratorical contests, and they would have a Martin Luther King speech, or maybe not just MLK, but some other, some top or oralists, and so I would have an opportunity to do that. I would do
Mm.
church plays. I was actually in something called the Ensemble Theater, which is one of the bigger theaters here in Houston, and I played, man, it was an Raisin in the Sun, and I played the son actually in that
Okay.
time, and so I had to start early on. Like, if I wasn't doing this, I probably could have had maybe a path in acting or something like that. But
Wow.
point is, I've always kind of been using my voice early on, and for
Mm.
me, I played sports, in high school, and for me, it was I would have a basketball game one day, and the very next day, I would come in and talk about it. And so once I knew I wasn't going to make it, to the league, to the NBA, and
A
I
lot of us come to that reality,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
unfortunately.
early on. Once I realized that, you also can get paid to talk about it, long term. I kind of jumped into it, and kind of determined really early on that this was a path that I wanted to pursue, and here we are, years later here in Houston.
Chance, one thing about you that I, like, really love just in terms of, like, your work is, like, you've done, like, a lot of, like, really cool, like, exclusive one-on-one interviews, and this goes back to your time at Arizona State, but I remember, when you had what was it, like, an internship or whatever with the NCAA, you were doing the Final Four stuff. You got to talk to Hakeem Olajuwon. I know you've talked to, like, Tom Izzo. More currently, you've done sit-downs with Derek Stingley Jr. Of the Houston Texans. You've done, what, Tank Dell when he was at the University of Houston, and then when you were in Wisconsin, you had, like, Devontae Adams. Like, you've been able to do a lot of these really cool exclusive one-on-one interviews where I feel like you've kinda gotten to inject, like, your personality too, like, or you'll do, like, a film, don't like, you'll go over, like, certain plays with them, like, what they were thinking. I guess maybe what was the inspiration for kinda going after those, like, wanting to maybe make an imprint, like, being a guy who could kinda get those interviews?
First off, some of those I almost forgot that I had done them, over time, and it's pretty cool resume to kind of look back on and see kind of where some of those guys are right now. But yeah, man, I think for me, I don't take those opportunities when I do have an opportunity to sit down with, some of those players in a kind of more one-on-one exclusive environment, because, they're tough to get, whether it's going through the team or through the organization, they might grant you those once, every blue moon, and then, or if you're able to, develop a relationship with them and you're able to get those interviews. To me, the biggest thing is I wanna make sure that I don't waste those, right? Like, my biggest thing is I go into those interviews saying, "What type of information can I get out of them?" And I want them to not feel like it's an interview. I want them to feel like it's a conversation, and that's
Yeah.
something that over time I've really had to learn to develop, and I've gotten better. It seems like, for at least for me, each year, and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And yeah, I just try to make them feel comfortable, right? Like, um, I think that in our business, man, no matter how cool you are with some of those guys and the relations that you're able to build with them, it always just seems that, like, look, you can be cool with them, but there will always be kind of like a media wall. They'll kind of always
Yeah.
just treat you as like media, even though like they might rock with you and they respect what you might do, but it's just like at the end of the day, you're still one of those, and which is not a bad thing, right? But you have to be able to break through that wall. And for me, I always try to find different ways to try to be creative to get around that. And so yeah, whether it's a film session or whether that's just something creative to try to make that work. And I've like some film sessions to, maybe try to grab a bite to eat with them if I can, or have them. Biggest thing I'll try to do is I'll talk to their people and say, hey, what do they like to do to get them more so in their environment? And so that works out. That helps kind of loosen them up a little bit as far as get some of that personality to come out. And you didn't know, you kind of even mentioned Derek Stingley. Derek Stingley is notorious for he doesn't
Not
really talk
talking.
much, right? He
Yeah.
doesn't doesn't he does talk, he doesn't give you much, and so, when I pitched the idea about the Connect Four, I know he's a competitor, no matter what he does, he is a competitor, and so when he said yes to it, I'm like, "Alright, man, it's a great opportunity," and so just even finding out that he's really big on Madden and he talks trash on Madden and he's really good at it too, that was pretty cool, and then just opening up from that to, like, now he gave me some actual football stuff that I thought was pretty useful, and so
Mhm.
I've always taken interviewing, very seriously, and I think it's one of the lost arts of what we do, one of the lost crafts. And so, like
Yeah.
I said, I always try to make sure I bring in some, try to pull out some good information and also showcase, these athletes that a lot of their fans seem to love.
For sure, and you talked about I mean, just kind of the examples you gave, like, you definitely did your research beforehand, before getting into those interviews, but when you're in like, I wanna give, like, some game like, I wanna make sure we extract some game, like, for maybe the younger folks listening who are interested in being a sports broadcaster or a broadcaster, journalist of any kind, like, when you can do the pre-work, right? But when you're in the actual interview, what have you learned to be some ways to get guys, gals to kinda open up to you in a way to where they feel comfortable trusting you, with certain information?
Great question. Because you know obviously, we know each other through SJI. That's when we really were able to get close. I had an opportunity, through SJI to intern at ESPN for a summer, and one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got while I was there, and it was through one of the talent managers, and I tried to pick everybody's brain in Bristol that I could. One of the best pieces of game that I found out was when it comes to interviewing, your best question or the best answers you'll get are from the ones that you're listening to or that you're listening for. So I can come in with a million notes, right? But oftentimes when you're in these interviews, they'll say something that will get you off of script. And it's really how do you react to that? And so a lot of times when you have these interviews, they've been asked whatever question that you just gave them, some type of form of that before, right? It's just at some point. So a lot of times they feel like you're not listening. And so one thing I've kind of realized is that when they give an answer, sometimes they'll give me a nugget and I'll immediately pivot. And you have to be ready to do that. And so you can kind of even I've noticed I've seen it on their face of like they'll tell me something. I'll give you an example. I had a sideline reporting gig at Rice here, and Rice is playing FAU.
Mm,
And I was interviewing the guy after the game, and to him it was just a standard post game. They won, they beat them by 10. It was a road game, and I did a little research on them, and I realized I think they had lost maybe two straight, but then they had came. This was their second game on their road trip in Texas, and they played really a really good game. So I asked them like, hey, like what's been, what was the secret to basically, the last winning back-to-back games? And he mentioned, like, kind of just half-heartedly, "Yeah, we had a meeting and we came together and, we figured out that, we really want to win this, whatever." And so I was like, "Oh, like, what was said in the meeting?" And so, once again, because he was kinda just, like, going through the motions, when I stopped and he realized I was listening, I could kinda see on his face, he was like, "Oh, yeah," like, he actually gave me like a detailed answer. And so that came
yeah,
from just listening, right? So I had questions prepared of what if he does give me nothing, right? What if he just, and that happens, you're not gonna always get it. But I'm always listening and seeing what can I pick up. And you have to be able to be quick on your feet and do that. And that takes practice. But one thing, to answer that question, long story short, I think the biggest thing is the best answers really do come from just listening and being able to pivot. And when you listen, that's when you have conversations. That's when you're not robotic. And I've come to realize, like, yeah, like, is the best people that I think have the best interviews come from when they're just holding a conversation. They're not trying to be robotic and they're not being scripted. And hey, I asked you a question. Now let me see what's next on my list as I go through three or four of these, and I'm actually
yeah.
present in the moment.
Yeah. No, that's really good stuff. Yeah, and in my personal experiences too, like that they even trust you more that you're just not like another person just trying to get your questions off, like you're genuinely curious. I think that comes across when you listen, right? But for you, Chance, like you mentioned kind of how difficult it can be to like just pivot like based off of something you're hearing a subject saying. Like, what has it taken, and maybe this is an ongoing process, right? But what has it taken for you to be comfortable maybe totally scrapping the pre-planned interview based off of something that subject said that got you curious? Like, how do you find comfort in needing to completely change course?
I think the biggest thing is being prepared. Um, You know, even kinda going back to that, my very first, sit down one-on-one interview was actually when I was in college, and that's one of the great thing I always talk about Arizona State and Cronkite is they allowed us to be really hands-on early on, and so it was I believe it was my senior year, Manny Wilkins was the quarterback. That's back when N'Keal Harry, who was first on the draft pick, ended up going to the Patriots, whatever. They had a really good team that year. And so, fortunately enough, they allowed me to have an interview with, the starting QB who, he was one of the leading guys, at least in the Pac-12. And so I was so nervous, man. Like I prepared. I was prepared all night on my question, had a list of notes. And kind of playing it back, you can kind of see how like, all right, cool. He answered my question. I'm moving on to the next one. And I'm moving on to the next one that like I was robotic in kind of my
Mm,
answers. But now my latest one that I had was with present day is with Jamal Shed, and I was fortunate enough to be able to break him going to the league. And so I
mm,
just been covering Jamal for so long, and I have such great knowledge just being around the program and just doing regular reporting that like I know certain topics and certain things I want to hit on. And so, yeah, I'm definitely doing my research and I might go into the interview thinking like, hey, if everything goes to plan, I want to hit on these couple of topics, but that's part of having a conversation of, you know, they're not scripted though, right? Like I have
yeah,
questions that I ultimately want to ask, but it's not like I'm going to ask this question a certain specific way, and if I don't, everything gets thrown off. And that's how, like in the past, I've actually tripped myself up, whether that's reporting or whether that's asking questions of pre-planned. This is what I'm gonna say, and this is how I'm gonna say it. And if I'm being robotic like that, one wrong word could completely throw me off. But now if it's just like, hey, I know at some point I want to ask you about Kelvin Sampson, and in the midst of our conversation, you give me something about maybe you bring up Kelvin Sampson. I can just pivot. It's just a natural transition of speaking of Kelvin, like, and now I may be able to pull from a nugget of reporting that I know that,
yeah,
he told me or know maybe a bit of information that I know, I can just apply that to asking questions. So, yeah, to answer your question, it's just about being prepared. And so when you prepare, that allows you just to be a lot more natural in your questions.
yep. That's a good point. Um, I guess for you, Chance, like, kinda going off of that, just kind of the art of interviewing, who are some of maybe the people that you've looked up to or studied to kinda get good at it, or has it really just been a reps thing for you?
I would say a combination of both. When I was in college, I used to watch people's interviews like game tape, like how athletes do, right? So to me, my Michael Jordan, when it comes specifically to interviewing, is Tom Rinaldi. I think he's the best at it, especially when it comes to more serious interviews or just extracting information. And so, I think there's definitely a science in being able to craft the type of questions. Because at the end of the day, you're really asking who, what, how, why,
When,
right?
where, why?
At the end of the
Yeah,
day, it's that, but it's not about always what you say, but it's about how you say it, right? And that's a big thing. And once again, going back to your main 5 ways of asking a question, it's also about the context that you put around it, and that goes back to once again having a conversation. So Tom Rinaldi is a guy that I look to. I think Maria Taylor, especially when she was doing a lot more interviewing and reporting back in her days at ESPN, she's somebody I used to watch often. I think Taylor Rooks,
she's
she's
incredible.
somebody who
Yeah,
people talk about a lot, but I think when it comes to interviewing, she's very good at that. Like she crafts really good questions and the context around it. But that's once again, she's talked about it and you can see it. It's about how she prepares herself. And so, those are 3 people that I've kind of have always watched over the years. But Rinaldi, especially, even going back to his storytelling. If he drops a story, I'm watching it. I'm trying to figure out how he wrote it, how they may have done editing, and that's not necessarily him, but just the network type execs and people, and because ultimately that's what you want to do at the highest level. And so I watch them to see how they do their thing, and then I try to take that, kind of put my own twist on it, and then I kind of go from there.
for sure. Yeah, all those people you mentioned, I look up to, and for me, like, Tom Rinaldi is a colleague of mine, and he's someone I've gotten to, talk with a couple times. He's actually been helping me with a project I'm working on, and he's really, like, one of the GOAT. Like,
Have
people need to understand that, like, he's literally one of the
pros, pros.
GOATs.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I'm feeling that.
Chance, if yeah, yeah, for sure. And, Chance, for you, I wanna kinda play, like, a situation for you. So, like, if you were, uh if you wanted to be a sports broadcaster, but you were like a high school or a college student right now, like, right, you're kinda coming into the industry, what do you think in 2024, right, in today's landscape, what are the specific steps that you would take to get to the position you are now in, and how, if at all, would that differ from what you did?
Yeah, I think for me, 'cause I've, met some people who, are graduating college and they ultimately wanna see how fast they can kinda get up, and I get it
Yeah,
because, the higher you climb, the more opportunities that you have. I would say the biggest thing, especially if you're coming out of college, if you can, and it's tough, but if you feel like you're in a place that you think, you might have an opportunity to maybe skip some of the lowest markets possible, I would try to, and I would aim for, and you want a happy medium. I would try to aim for a place where there's an elite program, college program, whether that's football or whether that's even basketball. I would try to go there versus just a strictly high school, because what ends up happening is when you're covering nothing but high school, and I get it, right? And not everybody's going to be able to do it. When you're covering nothing but high school, you don't have an opportunity to cover uh, the highest the highest athletes and have some of the big event coverage. And a lot of times when you're just covering high school stuff, you might have the same amount of resources, and that, whether we like it or not, can hold you back, as far
yeah,
as wanting to climb as quickly. Now, at the same time, you also learn a lot. So I'm not taking anything away from it, and it's definitely a grind. And even when I was in Green Bay, like I was covering the Packers, I was covering the Bucks, but I was MMJ. So don't, not to get it confused, right? Like it's not like I hopped into college and had a full time and had all these resources and was able to do whatever I wanted to. I'm not saying that, but I think having the opportunity to cover obviously one of 32 NFL teams, not just one of 32. We're talking about one of the premier NFL teams in the league, and also had a lot of star power at the time with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and look at the
yeah,
NBA side of things. The Bucks when they won their championship, I lucked out. Now timing is everything. You won't always have that, but having the opportunity to cover an NFL game, and I can wholeheartedly say if it wasn't for me having the opportunity to do that, whether that was with the Packers or anywhere else, I don't think I would have had a chance to be here in Houston. So
mm,
those gave me those reps and those opportunities to do that, and so yeah, along the way, obviously, you're working for your station, but it's not a bad thing to be a little selfish too, right? Like as far as trying to find things that work for you, right? And
yeah.
get your personality, and of course, do your day to day, but try to go land that interview, even if that's maybe having to work a little bit harder than others. That comes with it, and I think all those things kind of contributed to where I'm at right now.
Yeah, those are some really good points, and I think just kinda what you said kinda got me thinking about my own situation, because I don't know if you remember, but I used to work in Laredo, Texas,
Mhm.
um, when that was my first full-time job, on the, Mexican border, and I actually don't know if I would have gotten out of Laredo, Texas, if it wasn't for the relationships I had, because obviously in Laredo, you don't have a big name football you don't have a big name basketball program. It's just high schools and AAA baseball. And I've seen a lot of people in markets like that. They can't get out because they don't because everyone is because there's no big events or whatever, and you don't have a lot of resources out there, and you're not getting eyeballs, right? So I think what you said is really important, but I also think, like, the relationship thing is important too. Like, I think if you could kinda have both of those things, the relationships, but also if you are starting out, and if you do have to be in a smaller market, working in a place, as you said, that kinda has a notable program to where
Mhm.
you can kinda get those eyeballs, because I've seen a lot of people kinda get trapped and then end up getting out of the business, right, in very early going,
Get burnt
because
out.
so little money that
Mhm.
it's like, "Is it even worth it if I have to work here for 6 years and not see any, reward from it?" So
What's the old saying? It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. That's a big thing
exactly.
too. And so yeah, but in order to climb up, especially as you get, higher and higher up, say a job like a Houston market opens up, or a top 10 job or whatever, there are going to be hundreds of applications that are people who are going to apply. So yeah, that's so what makes you different from everybody else. And out of those 100, like there are going to be a lot of really good people, and what it comes
Yeah,
down to, does the news director or does the sports director feel comfortable with you? And, like, letters of recommendation, or, they'll talk to people. And so, it definitely helps to know some people, that that'll definitely take you far in this business for sure.
absolutely. Chance, what do you think has been your most I mean, we talked about how you've covered the Packers kinda in their heyday in the recent times with Aaron Rodgers and, Davante Adams, and then the Bucks, their championship run a few years ago, but I guess what to this point has been your most memorable reporting experience and why?
Yeah, for me, definitely the Bucks championship run. That was so special. I've had a lot of really cool opportunities from Super Bowls to, um, multiple Final Fours, and that's not to brag, but just thinking back on some things I've been able to accomplish. But to be in Milwaukee at the time, they hadn't won a championship an NBA championship in over 50 years. And to see the city come out the way that they did and just be on that ride. And the thing is, I don't know if people know this, but Green Bay is about an hour and a half out from Milwaukee. And
Yeah.
so, for those games, I was traveling, 3 hours round trip to do it. But I don't regret it. And like I said, a lot of those times was MJ waiting in the crowd. And this is during the COVID era too. And so a
Mm.
lot going on, at the time, and you still a lot of times masking up but it was great, man, and to have that and to be a witness for that, and just that whole time period in Green Bay kind of really shaped and molded me and, cover the Packers there, moving out to up north, being from Houston and going to school at Arizona State. I had never seen snow before until I got
Mm.
to Wisconsin. And my very first day there, it snowed, and so, like, just little things like
Wow.
that, I'm able to reflect on and think about some of those moments. It was really cool, and I learned how to report, how to be in a professional locker room. What it's like being in some of those big games. When you're at Lambeau, every game is a big game at that point. And, covering 2 NFC championships, making relationships with the athletes, and so that really kind of helped, get me to once again where I'm at today.
For sure. What do you think, Chance, is the biggest misconception about being a sports reporter on TV?
I'd say, people think it's glamorous, which, is I wouldn't call it that. I think there's definitely some moments that, I look back on for sure, um, for me, anytime I have an opportunity to cover, some of those really cool things, I think about how blessed I am, right? Like, I'm grateful that, God put me in this position, and I'm able to make the most of those opportunities, but some days are tough, we are working long hours, and I know you know that very well, right? Like, especially those game days, like,
Mhm.
great, you get to see, you get the access that a lot of people wish they could have, and, ultimately, we get paid to attend these games and get paid to talk about sports, but they're grinds, man, and, like, for me, this is kinda like the sweet spot for me, now that, NBA's calmed down at least here in Houston, and Texans are in the off season, but before you know it, man, like, once again, I know training camp will be here, so it's kinda like my little time to where I'll be able to kinda catch deep breaths before not only Texans start, but at the same time, for somebody like myself, I'm covering high school football, and that's huge here in Texas.
Yep.
Covering, U of H and some the other football teams, and so, it doesn't stop for us, and like I said, it's a blessing. I'm not one to complain about it, but like I said, it's not as glamorous as people might think it is, especially, pay wise is, it could be better. But, ultimately, you work for things like that, and I really don't have too much to complain about.
Speaking of kind of the unglamorous parts of it, what is kind of the passion and mission for you of kinda doing the job that you do?
Yeah, I think for me, ultimately, I do love it, right? Like I love what I do, and I wouldn't want to do really anything else at the end of the day. I'm really passionate though about storytelling. I really do enjoy talking about some of those exclusive interviews. It's not necessarily about that, but it's really about having an opportunity to share the stories of these athletes, right? And they go and deal with so many different things in their lives, and for them to trust me with stories, especially stuff that the features where they may be giving us information or things that are really personal to them, the fact that they might trust me with that,
Mm.
that does hold a lot of weight, mean a lot to me, and so, you kind of going back to, mentioning Tom Rinaldi, like he has some really deep and heavy stuff, and so, like that's the type of stuff that, personally, I enjoy being able to tell those, and so, ultimately, I like to continue to do it at the highest level and have that opportunity, but, it's been really fun, being here in my hometown and, being close to family and friends.
What is it like for your family and friends to see you on on TV, like in Houston. Like that has to be like a full circle moment for, I don't know, your mom and dad, like, to kinda see that. What's that like?
Yeah.
Or what do they
Yeah,
say about
it's
what it's
really
like for them?
yeah, it's really cool, man, and, because in Green Bay, they had to tune in online for all the shows when I used to anchor, once a week or so, or if I told them I had a big story on, but now they can just, tune in, right from the comfort of their homes, and so that's been nice, and every now and then I'll get a text from my mom saying, "Hey, pick a different suit next time, I wasn't feeling that one," and so, I appreciate the honesty. When it's cool, man, like, it's definitely, being fun, and so, especially come from Green Bay where it's not a ton of stuff to do in your free time to come back home in Houston where I'm comfortable and I'm an engaged man now, man. So it's working on that next step for me. So it's been pretty cool and to be in a city like this and it's really dope.
Chance, what do you think has been your biggest failure in your career to this point, and what did it maybe take to get past that?
Fortunately for me, I haven't had anything that I look back and like, oh man, I got like if you want to use the word failure, but there's always learning lessons, and a lot of things is trial and error. I'm still trying to figure out, man, like you talk about some of the interviews I have been able to get. I think about the ones I haven't been able to, right?
Mm,
Like,
yeah,
and learning how to develop relationships and still, man, even going back to what I was saying earlier about that media wall, man, it's something serious that I'm really trying to break through. And I think over time, like, yeah, just it happens. Relationship building, it takes time. And so for me, it's always something that this craft and journalism is something I'm always working on. Always trying to get better, whether that's my reporting, interviewing, storytelling, all of that type of stuff. It all comes together. But like, unfortunately, I haven't had a moment where I'm like, oh man, like it was bad. But I'm trying to think. I had one opportunity when I went to the NCAA tournament where like everything hit the fan, and that was a rough moment.
what hit the fan? What do you mean?
uh, I went to see, there you go, that's listening, right? Like, and
Yeah.
not just but that's, to be able to kinda dive in detail into more of that, but I was at the NCAA tournament, covering the Houston Cougars, and I was MMJing at the time. And man, like, just I had so many issues, and they continue to pile onto one another, and, like, it was tough, man. Like, I had, like mentally, I'm never one to complain, but, like, it got so bad. Like the camera wasn't working and my live shot wasn't going through, and it was one of those situations. It
Oh,
would have been
no.
awesome to have an extra hand and have a photographer, but I was all the way up north covering a big event where they were relying on me back in my station to come through, and actually, at the time, that was my very first really big opportunity to travel, and, once again, I was by myself, and it just was a tough feeling to where I just felt like nothing was going my way, and I wasn't able to really execute some of the basic things that they were asking me to do, even though all of the issues were none of those were my fault. It was just things that just, kept
Mm.
piling on tough. And so, um, at the end of the day, it really wasn't even a learning lesson. The learning lesson was please send me up with a photographer next time. Yeah, like, but yeah, like, you have bumps along the way. And like I said, everything is a learning lesson. And I'm always striving to continue to get better.
Absolutely. No, that's good stuff. Uh, Chance, kinda winding down here, where can people go to, I guess, learn more about you on social media, or to kinda keep a tab on your work with, KPRC in Houston?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Twitter is Chancellor TV, Chance 2 L's OR TV, and that's where on the daily. But I would say even just on a broader and more general scale, I have a YouTube page just like everybody else, and that's usually where I post most of my projects and some of those interviews or some of those features and projects and stories. That's kind of like usually where I update those on. So I might hop in that TikTok space soon and the real space. People are always looking for different content, but, I'm always, looking to see what I can kind of create next.
For sure. No, that's good stuff, and for everyone listening, all that will kinda be in the show notes too, so be sure to tap in with Chance. And last one for you, bro. I kinda ask everyone this at the end. It's kind of a broad question, so bear with me, but, um, what do you believe is one thing that people can do to get one step closer to to reaching their pinnacle or to kind of maximizing their personal potential?
Yeah, it's almost like a sports cliche, but the whole like get 1% better every day is a real thing. Continuing to stack days. Because you can go through different phases and seasons of your life where, you know, things run together and you look back and it's like, oh man, like even like now, like we're in May. I remember when we were at the top of the year and we were looking towards 2024 and Texans were in the playoffs, or seems like not that long ago, and it's not that it was, but I was, covering the NCAA tournament in March, but,
Mhm.
things move quickly. And so, whether that's professionally, trying to get better at my craft, to even personally, just self-evaluation, with things in my life, whether that's, I try to hit the gym, I'm trying to, try to hit the weight room, trying to build my body up, right? Like
Yeah.
even stacking those days and being consistent. Just trying to figure out what other ways in my life that I can, be a better person, be a better, professional, be a better
Yeah.
friend, son, and all that good stuff, everything that comes with that. So, that 1% better thing is real. Other thing too, I'm always trying to learn something that even outside of, um, what I do professionally. I try to read a little bit more that I wasn't
Mhm.
doing at the time, or look up YouTube videos of like developing new skill sets. I'm
Yeah.
always trying to figure out a way to be better, and you never know like when it can be useful, and even if it's not, I've really learned to appreciate figuring things out on my own. I've been
Mhm.
blessed that to have two loving parents who have helped me along the way. It's not that I've been spoon fed everything or anything like that, but just part of being an adult, just learning and growing up, maturing, like all that type of stuff is something that I try to continue to get better at each and every single day.
Love it. Love it, bro. Appreciate you for coming on, and for all you listeners, thank you all for tuning in to this latest episode of Pinnacle Code. You guys know the deal. I will be back next week, but until then, I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.